All right.
Hello.
Hey guys. Steven here, the other co-founder for Press Start Cap. So I'll be your moderator for today. And so we've got some amazing OGs today to talk about storytelling and community. So first up is JMR Luna. Hey Jay.
Hello, everyone. How are
Former
you guys doing?
amazing. Former filmmaker and former CEO of OG Esports. And he's going to be joined by Benny Yang, who's the co-founder of Future Primitive, as well as an OG from Dapper Labs and CryptoKitties. So welcome, guys.
Hello.
Awesome. Thanks for having us. Yeah, really excited.
Cool. Let's jump right into it. So yeah, maybe Jay, do you want to start off by just giving us like a quick intro of your personal story?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My story, I used to make films in Hollywood. I make movies for Netflix, for studios. I was part of the Producers Guild of America. And that was pretty much my whole life since I was a kid. I went to school for that, and I only had a job on movies until 4 or 5 years ago that I started working on esports. After that, I did a big documentary about esports, so sort of like the road to survive. And I was poached by Lionsgate and the Lakers that they were making a joint venture to create an esports team. And I was the vice president. And after that, I was like, well, if I'm going to do it for someone else, might as well make it for a team of my own. And I joined OG, and I was their first and only CEO to this day for 3.5 years.
Yeah, I love the background. I think this is gonna make for a pretty interesting conversation. So yeah, likewise, Benny, would love to hear more about your personal story.
Yeah, I was just saying before this session, I was like, wow, I am thoroughly impressed by JMR's history and background. Unfortunately I did not come from the movie industry, but I'm calling here from Vancouver, and I guess they call it the Hollywood of the North. A lot of CGI and visual effects and all of that are up here, and naturally that kind of spawned the interest into something like CryptoKitties and Dapper Labs. That's where the home of NFTs, I would say, frankly, begins. So I spent the last 8 years in startups. I, worked at a bunch of different tech companies and eventually landed at a venture studio here in Vancouver, where I got the chance to work on like location-based dating apps, VR live streaming, to mobile games, and then we eventually landed on the cute and cuddly cats that you can collect as NFTs. And then my ride with Dapper Labs, I worked on Cheese Wizards, NBA Top Shot, which had 1 million+ users, and it was the first time like fusing a huge IP like the NBA with something like digital assets. So that was really fun. I was leading one of the main product teams. And then eventually I left Dapper Labs, formed Future Primitive as an on-chain product studio, and we started to work with streetwear fashion brands like Jeff Staple from the Staple Pigeon brand and Billionaire Boys Club from Pharrell and Nigo. And we just launched some crazy NFTs in the beginning of 2022. And then essentially we landed on a new Ethereum standard, which we'll talk about in a second.
Love it, love it. I'm just noticing that photo of Jaden in your background, just kind of tripping me out. But anyways, yeah, I mean, obviously work with like some marquee brands, so we'll dive into that. But first, let's kind of hear about like how did you guys define storytelling and why is it important for builders? So, maybe Benny, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so for me it's a little bit different. Whenever even early days of CryptoKitties and Dapper Labs, even for Future Primitive, one of the main engines of driving us to build what we build is actually looking back into our childhood. And we actually spend a lot of time. It's one of our actual main values for FP. I always tell the team like, hey, I think the best ideas are ideas that really make us dream and bring us back to our childhood. Like CryptoKitties was kind of like a Tamagotchi, Neopets. It brought us back there. Cheese Wizards was essentially like rock, paper, scissors in the playground. NBA Top Shot was like basketball card collecting, but in the new form. So, everything that we've done up until now has always been about like, oh, what if we reimagined what we thought was fun as a kid and then kind of brought it back to the modern day and used all the modern day tech stack, which is the blockchain and crypto and all of that. So it plays a really huge role. And you can tell the difference between the different projects in this space that have that like really extra delight that they put into the user experience and the brand and the colors and how they kind of interact with other things. So yeah, that's how it plays a huge role in what we do.
Yeah, keeping it fun, right? Always going back to the childhood stuff. How about you, Juan? Like, obviously given your experience, going through film school and then actually being an award-winning filmmaker, like how do you define storytelling?
I think for me, is maybe I give an answer that is very different from what we heard in this week of panels. Look, many people start with a product, an idea of what they're trying to feed and what you're trying to create. Some of them, the classic is find a problem that you can solve and figure out if you can solve it better than anybody else. For me, it's more, I angle it differently. For me, it's about a sense of belonging. You move through life and you have a lot of interactions in your life that are based to find a place that either people accept you, people that believe that you can belong there. And at the end of the day, humans are social creatures. We need that place where we find ourselves just being loved and wanted. So with that in mind, when I start a project, I always think about it. Okay, so is it a red ocean place that I'm going to start? Is it a blue ocean? Am I going to have competition? And if so, how is my community different from anybody else? What people are there that are not identified or not already in a place of belonging? And how can I create something that can bridge that to them? So for me, product comes secondary to understanding the community that I'm going to try to target and the story that I'm going to be telling. So all the way in the top, I try to figure out, okay, why should anybody care about this? And you hear me saying the same thing throughout this whole speak is the product market fit and value proposition. Why should anybody care about anything that I'm doing? And if I identify what they should care, who are these people, then the whole thing starts from there. I come about with a product later. The product is okay, well, now if these people are there and this is what they want and this is how they feel about this, then how we create something that is authentic for them. And then how do we communicate that effectively to them so they understand that what we're building is specifically made for them. And by them joining us and by them being part of this community that was made for them, they can find what they want.
It's really interesting, right? Because like, Jay's kind of coming at it from, a belonging point of view, and Benny's kind of coming at it from the nostalgia point of view. So yeah, I love these different point of views on this similar topic. So I guess along those lines, um, I think we hear people talking about storytelling, and one of the main goals of storytelling is to build a brand, right? So, are there any tactical tips you guys could share for you for telling your story and to build your brand? And also, if you guys have noticed any differences between building a brand for Web 2 versus Web 3. Jay, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, look, for building a brand, obviously I can give a lot of technical because it's explanations because this has been my whole life. But I do start from a very personal thing. I always say that I cannot build a brand on anything. No, I can only build brands that I know for people that I understand or communities that I belong. If you make me do for something for a community that I don't understand, my intro should be like I first have to discover it. Like an Ender's Game. I don't know if you guys read the book. I first have to understand you to be able to work with you. So when you build a brand, is what will be the brand awareness, many more people getting exposed to your brand. What will be your brand positioning? Is people understand what you're trying to say and how you're positioning the brand? Brands have to be very, very simple. Uh, Otherwise, it's very hard to communicate complex structures or messages. And if they're simple and the message is simple, the resonance and the penetration that they will have will be much larger because now people can understand what you're doing. Then another thing that I really believe for anybody that is there, soulless brands are very hard to sell. And if you are a mega corporation and you're a logo with no faces, it's very hard to connect with people. And in movies, we have something that we build in every movie is that if I want you to care about Harry Potter, I need Harry Potter's face on the screen as much as I can. Because the more you see his face direct to his eyes in front, your ability to emotionally connect with him is much larger because that's how we connect with people. So my advice for people would be you have to personalify your brand and you have to put people and faces in front of them. It's a huge acceleration if you do so, because you are probably going to feel for me faster than you're going to feel for the brand. And now you have an emotional connection with the brand.
I want to dig into that a little bit because I remember in a previous life, like I did an A/B test on our website where we put people's faces for this like video codec technology, which you would never think that people care about faces, but we actually saw a big jump in sales and downloads once we put people's faces. So I guess my follow-on question to that, Jay, is does it matter whose face you put? Is it the founder's face? Is it your target audience, or just any faces will do?
I think that there is obviously a few details into this conversation, but I would say who is the person that is going to be benefiting from it? This will be important to show that face, and you have to care about that person, but also who is the best person to communicate and the the message and who is part of the community themselves. I mean, you can think about it from sports, you know. You still think about Tom Brady for the Patriots. You still think about Jordan for the Bulls. And the more that you do to tell the story of these individuals, the easier it is for us to connect. This is the whole idea of Netflix documentary now about Formula One or tennis or Hard Knocks. You now know their personal stories. You will find connecting point with these people because everybody has a mom. Most people love their mom. You know, everybody has a struggle. Everybody has low points and high points. If you're able to showcase them, you will create connective tissue and people can connect with you. So for me, it's not only about the face, which plays a big part, you know, but is the more people that can relate to you and want you to succeed, they will evangelize for you. They become your champions. And I'm sure Benny has a lot to say about this because it became very tribal. Their community was like, hey, this is amazing. And I'm going to share it with you because you should be joining this amazing thing that I'm joining, you know? So now you're sharing it with your friends. So now you become the next phase interfacing with your friends. So, you know,
Yeah, I think that F1 documentary is a great example, right? Because you normally don't see the drivers until that documentary came out. Yeah, Benny, how about throwing it over to you? Like, any tips for building a brand and um, anything to keep in mind from building a Web2 brand versus a Web3 brand?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Jay has said already around social psychology and sociology and all that, but I would kind of dig into what kind of drives me with everything that we do here in FP. Like we get really inspired by I used to be like a skateboarder, albeit not very good, or really nowadays I carry like they still carry the skateboarding camera and film, make mixtapes, and then mint them on Zora. And I also really like you know, m music, especially like rap music, like Brockhampton, like forming these kind of crews or Odd Future that Tyler the Creator created. And I'm just looking at all these like little pockets of people who wanted to hang out and do something fun, and it really comes down to like energy and vibe that is emanating from this group of people. And I think that's like the primitive way of thinking about brands, right? Yes, a brand has a visual aspect, as Jay said, or there's like technical things you can do. You can create a mission statement, a vision statement. You can have five values that are like written on your wall or something like that. But it really comes down to like lifestyle and how you really like live yourself. Whatever brand you create, every brand that you want to be a part of, it should be, you should take a piece of yourself and then it kind of accentuates it, right? As Jay said, like, you know, you wouldn't want me to like market a luxury brand. Like, that's just not my thing. Like, I'm more on the grassroots, and I'm more like for the people, as you can see with all these things that are surrounding me is people who participated in a project that we launched at Denver and all the other projects that we've launched. So I think, you know, be true to yourself, as corny as that sounds, and then kind of accentuate that. And it doesn't really matter Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, Web 4, Web 10, right? At the end of the day, you know, as Jay said, we are all humans and we all relate to each other in a very human way. It's the reason why, you know, movies don't, like, people still watch movies. Like the other day, I watched The Boy and the Heron, and I'm like, yo, this, like, you know, Hayao Miyazaki, he's like 80, 85 or something, and he's still making, you know, amazing movies about storytelling, right? So it just never really ages as long as you stay true to like your root, right?
Oh man, like I love that because like we did a session earlier talking about like founder market fit, and so I feel like kind of like the message that you just shared resonates a lot with that. Um, Sticking with you, Benny, I kind of want to like maybe slightly change gears a little bit and kind of shift into community. So obviously a lot of overlap, but you know, kind of want to get your take as someone who has literally been at the forefront of all the major crypto primitives, right? So you were there for ERC 721 with your studio in Vancouver. Obviously, you're part of the founding team of Crypto Kitties and also the guys behind NBA Top Shot, and now you're working on ERC 6551. So, and you know, you built out those communities very, very well. I would say you're probably one of the better community leaders out there today in crypto. So, is there anything that you can kind of share as far as tips for builders and founders on how they can kind of build their own Web3 community?
Yeah, I'll kind of start off with building community is a very difficult and arduous task, right? There is no shortcuts. If anyone here in this call is like, hey, how do I like, I started off as a growth hacker, so I started to like find little loopholes and gray areas, or like pull in email lists from, you know, who knows where, and just like spam people with drip campaigns. So that was kind of like my area of like growth hacking. But through time, over my last 8 years of like being in startups, I've kind of realized like there is no like, the growth hacks are like quick little band-aid things that kind of get you that little bump, but like real communities are actually built of really hard work. And like, if you go to any of the communities that I've built, especially the latest one, Token Bound Working Group, there's 1,800 like developers and builders in there. And if you scroll up that chat feed all the way from the beginning, is literally me and Jaden, our CTO, and the feature primitive team in there answering questions every single hour, you know, every single day. And, you know, there's just no substitute for building that trust. Now, one can argue maybe AI one day can emulate me and like answer these questions, maybe. But I'm kind of old school in that way. It's just like, hey, I wanna, yeah, I kind of remember like the old Dropbox lesson where the founder of Dropbox like had a phone on his desk, and he would like pick up the phone and like did hundreds of calls a day with customers. And I'm old school in that way, that I'm like, hey, like if I could have 3, 4 calls a day with someone that's part of the community and get to know them, like truly get to know them, after a whole year of 365 days, it's quite a lot of people. Now, is that like 50 million or 1 billion users? No, but I've kind of like, through my chance to build projects that had anywhere from like 1,000 users to a million users, I've kind of come to an understanding that it's about the quality over the quantity. You hear that a lot. But really, if you get 10,000 people who are like, yo, I'm all about you and I love the energy, I love the vibe, that's a community in itself, right? So I wouldn't measure it by the size. So, you know, hopefully these are helpful points. Maybe it's quite obvious, but I don't have any special trick. I just roll up my sleeves and I just literally talk my ears off until people, hopefully either they hate me or they like me, and then we become best friends one day.
I mean, you got to do unscalable things, right? So no shortcuts. You just got to be in there answering the questions. I think there is something to be said about asking a question and then getting a response from the founder directly, as opposed to asking some sort of like AI assistant. I myself as a user like could definitely see users kind of being more drawn to that when they actually talk to the founder and get a response from the founder. Um, cool. Let's shoot over to Jay. So Jay, obviously with your filmmaker background and film school and all that, and kind of like, what you learned there, like the storytelling techniques there. Is there anything that from the film industry that you think could apply to Web3 builders?
I wanted to a few seconds to add to what he was saying about how to
Yeah.
build a community, because I have a few points that I wanted to share. What I did is to build a community, I identify what is the point of passion that unites that community. Then what is the value proposition that can fulfill that point of passion or feel that point of passion or just continue feeding that? So in esports for me was you love Dota? Hey, I love Dota. You love OG? Hey, I love OG. So now we have the point of passion and then we have the value proposition that goes with the point of passion. The next thing I need is a reason to meet. We call it town halls. We have games every week. Well, this is a perfect opportunity for us to meet and share that point of passion together. Okay, so now you have the three keys, you have the point of passion that unites you. Now, what am I gonna share with you, which is the game, and then the reason why we're meeting. Then the next thing that I do is I participate authentically in that experience. So we are now part of the community. Like Benny said, now I understand exactly what you are because I'm the same thing. I'm just a nerdy like you. Now, another very strategic thing that I did is in order to build a community, it has to feel completely authentic. So what a better place to hire that from part from the community. I hire a lot of people in OG that were part of the community. I need a new social media person, we'll go to the community. I need a new person that is going to be organizing events, go to your community. These people are already authentic. They already understand. They're part of the community and they're already your champions. You're never going to find a more loyal employee and more loyal person. And then in OG, I never had free work. Every moderator that was on Discord, everybody that was helping out on that, I paid everybody a fairly American hourly rate. Because I believe that not everybody has the possibility to work for free because their family's condition and whatever they are, like they might not just be able to work for free for things. So I paid everybody, all the moderators and everybody that was there. So now I have loyal champions that are part of the community, that are authentic, that they know more than me because they're there on the ground and they are able to talk to each other and to the people that are there. And then I create a path of aspiration. There is a path to become part of the community. So I reward people that are actively helping us to where they join, the circus and they join us. That is extremely powerful because now your employees were already part of the community. And to go back to the movie thing, uh, movie that is slightly different because we don't really build communities like that. But what I do in a movie is I create resonance and penetration into your life. You know how many of the funny memes that we have, or the dude calling people dude, coming from like Big Lebowski and the Duderino, so you create penetration into society. You have the ability to change how people interact with each other. And again, the sense of belonging. I am a Star Wars nerd. I want to share with you my passion for Star Wars. My favorite movie growing up was Big Lebowski. If you tell me that your Big Lebowski is your favorite movie, dude, you have a friend with me forever. So those are the things that we put, into movies that we can see when you use it and you penetrate it and you wear a t-shirt with the dude and the Big Lebowski. Now you're evangelizing for me as well.
Would it be fair to say things like the dude from the Big Lebowski is nothing more just than a meme? Is that a fair summary?
Not, not. I mean, not for me. I don't know for you, but not for me. For me, it's a sense that these characters were very iconic. and represents a very interesting part of the world, you know, somebody that had a very strong beliefs. And at one point, life didn't work the way that he wanted to work. So he became a nihilist where he doesn't care about anything. And he has simplified his life to bowling and beers with his friends. What drive him to get there? You know, it's a social criticism of where we are, Vietnam, and all these things. So that little character, in a way, personifies a huge story behind that many people can relate to.
Interesting. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to like your earlier point about kind of belonging, right? So people kind of feel like they belong and they can kind of relate to the character in the film. Um, yeah, and I also love the point you guys made earlier about like authenticity, right? Like Benny being true to himself as a founder, um, not doing a luxury brand, but like kind of doing a brand that aligns more with like his own vibe. So yeah, love those points. Let's let's move
Steven,
on to
sorry,
like
I'm sorry to hoard the microphone for a second. I wanted to add a little thing.
go
Uh,
for it.
Back in the day, think about Mozart and all these authors that were trying to tell a message to us. You know, think about uh, they wrote beautiful songs and they wanted us to understand the stories of the songs. Okay. So the person that started writing the message or the movie was like, I have something to communicate and I want you to feel what I felt. And this is a vehicle for me to communicate that with you. But there's a lot of studies that modern music are not about that anymore. Modern music is about how you felt when you heard it before and the feelings that you attach to it now. So they're empty vessels. So when I think about Alan Walker, I don't know what the song means, but I do remember when I heard this song back in New Year in Bangkok and how awesome was to see Alan Walker live. So what it means is that now a lot of the things about branding has become about what you attach, the emotions that you attach to it, not the emotions that maybe it had at the beginning. So I would actually even ask you, Benny, because I knew what CryptoKitties were and I experienced CryptoKitties. But CryptoKitties, if you think about it, is just thing as a layer. Now everybody start attaching emotions to it. Everybody start attaching meaning to it. You attach some of it as the founders, but then I attach something else. What it meant for me, the Tamagotchi, you know? And that is really cool because now you don't own the full meaning of this. We all create the meaning together.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful. Like that's what's been driving this whole NFT movement, this at least this new wave, right? Like it's not just a bunch of bytes in a JPEG, right? It's actually about the moments that you share. I think one of the most powerful things is these PFP communities like the Azukis, the Doodles, the Bored Apes. Like, I think a lot of those communities can attest to like, hey, I met Jay at the I don't know the Bored Ape event in Hong Kong or something, right? And we had a shared love for dim sum, right? And like the NFT itself kind of fades into the background, and again to both the points that we've mentioned, it's like it's the human connections, and the NFT becomes so much more. The value is more about the friendships you formed, right? So yeah, that's really, and I'm always amazed to hear all the CryptoKitty stories because I think for a lot of people it was like the first thing that people got to actually play with that was visual and slightly fun. And there are all these Easter eggs that we snuck in, like when you breed your kitties, there's like an egg and an eggplant and stuff, and like it was just all practical jokes for us. But I think for other people, when they saw it, they kind of had their own laugh and saw other things too. So yeah, I really love that part of like being open and building in the open, and part of crypto and Web3 really accentuates that, right?
Yeah, it's all those little touches, right? Like I remember for NBA Top Shot, at least for me, kind of like the experience of like breaking open a pack kind of reminded me as when I was a kid, right? And opening up all these like sports card packs and like the excitement and the anticipation. And I think you guys even called it moments, I think, right? NBA Top Shot. So to your point, kind of like tapping into that human emotional part. And I guess with NBA Top Shot also like the nostalgia too. Um, Cool. Like so let's move on to some of our questions some of our common questions that we hear are what are the top mistakes that Web3 builders make when it comes to telling their story? Um, Jay, do you want to start us off?
Hmm. I think that I would say just keeping it very broad. The top mistakes is maybe you're not the right person to tell this story. I will say that, or maybe you're not the right founder or the right voice, or you don't have the right cadence to tell this story. And don't let your ego get on the way. Well, it's mine, so I have to be selling it. Okay, well, if it's you, you're gonna have to maybe put the work also to learn how to communicate and learn how to do that if that's something that you want to do. But it's a learning curve. So just like other people are really good at coding, other people are good at communicating stories and telling the story of the company. So just because you build it doesn't mean that you know how to sell it, but you might have a very good angle. So figure out what the angle is, how are you positioning your brand, and what other help you need to be able to communicate the story. I mean, again, another joke. Backstreet Boys had sporty one, the the hip hop one. So everybody has a different angle that they can create to communicate. So figure out what needs to be communicated and who are the right people to communicate it. I would say that's probably the first mistake. Second is assuming that people are going to care about what you're going to say. No, no one cares. No one cares. I don't think your mom really cares even, but she has to care or pretend to care because it's your mom. So the idea is like, well, I have a voice, therefore I should be listened to is ludicrous to me. If you are saying something that is worth being saying, even still, you're not entitled to anybody's opinion or anybody's attention, sorry. So people think that, well, because I work hard, you should be listening to me. No, no, it doesn't work like this. I wish it did. So now you have to earn the right to talk. You have to earn the right to be listened to. Sorry, you can always talk, but you have to earn the right to be listened to. And you have to do it by authenticity and by maybe saying something that people want to hear. I'm sure there was a lot of other projects in Web3 that no one cared about. And maybe some of them were fantastic. Oh, tough luck. Maybe you didn't find a way to penetrate the market. Maybe you didn't find a way to say the right things, the magic words, connect to the right people, find the right evangelists. And it's okay. Don't take this as a loss. Well, it meant that your product was not meant for this, or you didn't find exactly the way to launch it. So yeah, that would be my two is, are you the right person to talk about it? And have you earned the right for people to listen to you?
Jay with the spicy takes. It's kind of like that saying, right? Like just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. And so it's kind of similar to that. Like just because you're talking doesn't mean that people pay attention. So you have to
Dude,
kind of
I went to film school. Everybody felt that, why are you not watching my short film? Well, dude, I'm sorry, but you made some kind of weird fucking artsy short film. Everybody has one, and your short film is I mean, just because you made it and you worked really hard on it doesn't mean that I care. And then
no.
it's like, oh, nobody cares about my 35-minute short film. Like, dude, 35 minutes? You want me to take 35 minutes on your life to see your short film? Like 3 minutes maybe. Maybe.
Spicy. Yeah, Betty, what do you think are some of the top mistakes?
Yeah, I think I go back to like basic copywriting, like again, who, what, when, why, how, like every time I'm about to begin, I that's what I lay out, and I'm like, all right, who is this for? What is this about? Why is this exist? And specifically why? I think that's such an important. It's really a question that annoys me, but it's good because I keep asking myself why all the time. And I encourage folks, I think a lot of Web3 builders, when they come up with a brand or they come up with a product, um, they really struggle with criticism. I think Jay kind of talked about it, right? Like you should be your own hardest critic. You should ask yourself why like 10 times in a row, and try to like root cause analysis and figure out like what is this all about? Why does this even need to exist? Why, to Jay's point, why does this need to consume 35 minutes of my time? What are you trying to say here, right? And you could even map it to like the golden circle from Simon Sinek, right? Where he kind of explains the same thing, like why is at the center of everything, right? If you think about all of the best products, and I'm gonna obviously mentioned Apple in this example, but like how Steve Jobs in the early iPod, he was like, yeah, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Like, those are the things I'm always looking for. Like, what is the 3-5 word that you can use that basically is like the most distilled, like consomme of words that you can say. And no matter pretty much 80-90% of the people, when they hear those 3-5 words, they're like, I get it. And there's a light bulb that turns on. You can tell from their face. And so I think a lot of Web3 builders, they get really caught up with some of the technical aspects of things and a lot of acronyms and honestly, I think for us, like I actually didn't think NFT, the acronym, would be a thing. I tried very hard as a team. We tried really hard in 2018 to try to like name it something else.
Yeah, you
But
guys coined it, right?
I know, but
It's all
I
your
just felt
fault.
like people
It's your
wouldn't like
fault.
use NFTs as the word, but I guess it did. It was fine. So I think just kind of be careful with that. And another thing I saw this week was, that company Humane, they built the AI pin, right? That is like a new product that has come out. And there was an interview, I think it was in the US news, like ABC or something, with the two co-founders. And the interview was kind of brutal because the newscaster is just like, why what does this do, like why do people want it? And they struggled, like they had to use like jargons like, hey, it's AI on your chest, like it connects to different LLMs and it helps you maybe help you with your daily tasks. And like just listening to it, you're just like, bro, like I don't think you're like the company's called Humane. I thought they should have said something like, "Hey, we've been addicted to our phones, and we wanted to build a product that can really accentuate human conversations and be hidden in the background." And I thought they would say that rather than, "Oh, this is AI pin, uses LLMs and stuff like that." So it's really crucial, subtle. But I think for builders, like really go back to the basics of copywriting, ask yourself why, and then simplify your message till it's 3 to 5 words that you can repeat, and then you can see the light bulb pop, and those are the words that you should stick to.
That's
Yeah,
amazing, actually. So, Steven, like next session, like the last session of the program, it's going to be founder speaking 3 minutes, then 30 seconds, then 10 seconds. It's the same idea of the 30-minute short film. Not everybody has 20 minutes to hear your idea. Even when it's great, you have to give me a chance to first get a little bit. And if I want to know more, I'll ask you for the 30 seconds. And if I want to know more, okay, well, tell me more about it. And if I want to know more, it will be, okay, let's set up a call and then we can talk about it. But I can't tell you how many times I sat on pitches and it's like I'm 6, 7 minutes in, I'm thinking, I still don't know what you're still in. I still have no idea what your product is about. Like you said, all these acronym, all this tech stuff. I'm like, I truly do not know even how to help you because you're not, people like helping. People like feeling good with themselves. It's a narcissistic element. I want to help you because I'm going to feel good with myself, but I don't even know how to help you because it's convoluted and tangled. And it's like, dude, I don't know, you know?
I think like Benny's recommendation, like to that point, like if you should definitely check out Simon Sinek, Start with Why, that video. It's classic, right? And I think to Jay's point, like most founders, the basic TLDR of that video is like you start with why, it's concentric circle. So why in the middle, and then how, and then the what. But a lot of builders start with the what and the how, and they never talk about the why. So um highly recommend that video from Simon Sinek. Um Maybe let's do like one more question for each before we open up to audience Q&A. So, Jay, let's start with you. So, you scaled OG Esports to billions and billions of impressions. How'd you do it?
Uh, well, I had an incredible brand with an incredible legacy, an incredible story that someone else built. I didn't build it, but I did find out how to create from a small campfire into a huge fire. You know, I was able to, again, identify what the point of passion was, identify exactly what the value proposition was, what are we going to share. I was able to go from one post a day to 10 posts a day. They were all creating more and more and more and more and more impressions. I found then a lot of other things to do, like create a podcast that then by itself create inventory, where I could sell to sponsors, but also create an incredible community tool. Then I took the podcast on the road, and it became the reason to gather. Not only you're gathering for the Dota event, but you're also now gathering after the Dota event for the podcast live, and then for the party there and the community things. And now you're in my house. I'm hosting this. I created other content pieces that will re-emphasize the brand, penetrate it into other parts of society, and amplify my reach organically. Like the idea is to create the compounding effect, the brand, the meaning, what it tries to communicate, the sense of belonging. Now I give you another tokenizable thing to belong. Now I give you a jersey that you can wear, and now you are putting meaning to that jersey because I gave it to you during a tournament that is signed, but now you're wearing it, and when you're wearing, people are like, "Hey, well, what is that?" Now you're creating entry doors into your story, into your project. And if you do all this very well and for a long time, you can feel the compounding effects. For people that like compounding is like 1 + 1 is 2, but +1 is not 3, it's 3.5. And +1, is 6. And you start creating a curve. And by the time the curve catches fire, then everything works and everything feels great. But you really have to build the momentum when there's no momentum built. I was very lucky that OG was already built. I just have to really distill the meaning, the whys, and the connection points, creating the three things: the power of friendship, the competing excellency, and then build a whole story on those things.
Yeah, and I love your point about momentum, right? Because it's like so many other things in this world, right? Whether it's shipping or driving a car or growing your brand, right? A lot of it is about momentum. Um,
And one thing, sorry,
cool.
more. I work a lot on splashes. That was a big thing, splashes. So reasons or moments that they can talk about you. Good work
Nice.
sometimes is unnoticed. But if you're timing a few of these things at the same time, you create a splash. You own the cycle of news, the news cycle. I think that's key. A lot of people don't understand how to do it. They always say like, "Oh, Jay, you're a wizard. You made the perfect documentary for the perfect moment, and it came out at the perfect time." I had the documentary recorded already 4 months ago. I was able to anticipate that one of my players was going to retire because I could feel it. So I recorded it, and I had a perfect hour and a half documentary where the player was retiring that got 6 million views. How? Well, not because I'm a magician. It's because I was able to hear how he was feeling, preparing this content piece, and then sit on it until I had it. And if you're able to sit on those news and just come in at the same time, now you own the cycle. Now everybody's talking about you for the next 3 or 4 days. And then you have another thing that pushes the cycle for 3 more days. So now you own 6 days. Now you find something else and you own the cycle for another 3 days. Wow. Now it's been a week and a half and everybody's talking about you. And now they don't think about anybody else. And so now like, oh, dude, there's like, these guys are really doing a lot of cool stuff. And now it's in their mind. Huh, they, I'm gonna check it out. So you
So
own
you purposely spread it out to maximize your time of
or
being
center
top
it
of mind, as
or
opposed
center
to
it all of
like,
them at once.
got it.
And sometimes depends on what I'm trying to do, depends on what my main entourage, like my main dish with my side dishes, or I'm preparing, like everything has to be tactical. Sometimes I want to captivate your attention with S plus and then feed you something else. Think about it if you went to a restaurant. I can give you something very flashy at the beginning, but if I give you something very flashy at the beginning, I better have a great main. Because if I give you my best shot on the first, you're gonna feel very disappointed. So I have to time every campaign or time every cycle, knowing the pieces of what I have after. This is tactical. I don't just find these things. I plan for those cycles.
Yeah, that's gonna be a great clip for us. Um, cool. So Benny, we get this question a lot, because a lot of founders are building something that's completely brand new, right? And so, you know, with your experience having done that before, like multiple new markets, um, whether it's, 721 or now with 6551. When it comes to inventing and growing a new market, talk us through your thought process. Do you have a different approach, or is it like pretty much the same approach as for existing markets?
Well, luckily, I've stayed in the crypto Web3 and NFT space, so there's a thread that can be strong, right? And yeah, so I think like I just shared a link in the chat, like it's this podcast. They dissect the whole album of In the Rainbows from Radiohead, and each episode is for each song. And it's incredible, like that album, like how many iterations some songs have been played a decade before live, but completely different or arranged differently, and then they kind of keep iterating through live shows until it finally made the final form. And I think a lot about that, and like about what we're doing specifically, right? Of like it's been 6 years now since the first NFTs hit the market. And 6 years later, I'm still working in the NFT space, and I really see it as like what we're doing now is writing that second chapter of NFTs that's focused on moving away from NFTs being a speculative vehicle to being more of a utility-driven thing. And to Jay's point, which I think Jay has a really sharp assessment, is like you really gotta have a sense of like what people are feeling right in the room, right? And I think for me, the sense that is kind of emerging, the macro feeling is that people hopped on the NFT train the last 2 years, and they spent a lot of money, and they are like now a little bit disappointed and kind of frustrated. And to Jay's tactical mind is like, well, that means it's time for a change, right? It's time for a transition, right? It's time for something new that can breathe life and kind of revive it, right? And I think that goes back to even just basic startups, right? I think the best startups aren't necessarily not just the team or the idea itself. It's literally timing, right? You could have came up with the idea of Uber like 10 years before Uber came out, but it would have probably missed the timing. People wouldn't have understood it. And so a lot of times, like what I find is you got to hold back. I feel like, at least for me, I got to hold back certain things until the timing is correct, right? If you time it wrong, the story's gonna go kind of weird. The meta is not there. The room of audience is not prepared to receive it. And it's gonna be really hard to wrangle that storyline. You're gonna be like fighting it tooth and nail. And to get it across. And usually I've seen other projects kind of enter that stage. So yeah, I don't think necessarily it's changing the storytelling, but really think about all the meta stuff that's happening, and then try to slot yourself in like, hey, what's the contrarian stance that you're going to take? What's your opinion, right?
I wanted to add something to this because it's really good, Benny, how you put it. In 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 film school, we always learn one thing. You have exposition and you have emotion building. You can't do both at the same time. Either I'm telling you something or I'm trying to convey an emotion. So if your project needs a lot more of exposition, then you have to understand it. Hey, I really have to spend the time explaining what this is in a concise, brief, and precise way. What is that I'm building? And you may have for 2 years just to continue talking, what am I building? Why am I building it? Nonstop, nonstop, nonstop until the wall moves or the wall catch up. I believe that you can move the wall. I believe that you can hit it with your head hard enough to where the wall moves, but it might take a while. Okay. So you can make a change in the world. And then when people understand what your product is, then you can start building emotion about it. If they don't understand it, they're not going to feel anything. It's not possible.
Yeah, this is why I love having you two, right? Because like Jay with the OG filmmaker perspective and Benny with the OG community perspective. So I love that. Um, let's jump into questions. I obviously want to make sure we allow the guys to ask their questions. So why don't we start off first with Jamie about your F1 question. So Jamie, do you want to come up and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so obviously talking about the F1 documentary that you mentioned there, and obviously given the fact obviously it's like hyper dramatized, right? It's not factual. So how do you take like this factual story and then turn it into like a dramatized story so it's a bit more entertaining and a bit more engaging? Is that something you should be doing as a founder, or should you purely be sticking to, the facts and figures? How does that work in your view?
I love it. You just gave me an alley-oop so I can dunk on people. No one cares about the reality. No one give a shit. Sorry for cursing. This is perception builds reality, not the other way around. Whatever people perceive becomes their reality. So if you factually tell a story the way that it's supposed to be, no one cares about it. You remember the movie Big Fish that Tim
Yeah,
Burton did? That's it. At the end of the day, you don't want to know the story of your father. You just want to know the story how your father told him, because now it's mixed with his emotion, his perception, and his way to tell it. So I would say you have to take some dramatic or creative liberties in order to be able to tell a story in a way that is engaging. And this is why it's not a documentary per se, it's a narrative documentary. There is an element, a dramatic documentary. A lot of those things are hopefully on the same spirit of how it happened. I understand because the job of a filmmaker is not to present reality, is to interpret reality. I am able to see reality, interpret reality, and represent and portray reality back to you. But the reality is not exactly factually how it happened, but it's supposed to be in the same spirit. If it's completely separated, it's a disingenuous portray of reality. If none of those guys have any of those drama, if then it's fake, then it's a fake reality show. But if there is a same spirit, I just dramatizing it. I know I'm using a lot of technical words, but if I'm dramatizing, then it's all fair game. Imagine that I creating a fake narrative, then that's not great. But I do have the ability to show light where I want it or point it at where I want it. Maybe the story of one guy and his girlfriend is not as big, but it allows me to represent and interpret that, hey, emotions and family connections are very important when you're risking your life and going that fast in a car. So I want the audience to understand that these people are really risking their lives. Yes, they are all getting very well paid and they are in very safe cars, but people die. And when people die, it means that there is fear in your spouse or in your significant others about you getting in that rocket with wheels. But now I have you in your mind. I put in their mind that, hey, there is a mortality incident to this. Hey, there is an important this. The stakes are raised. So now I want you to win. I know what you're feeling. And now I'm also thinking, shit, I really hope he's okay. Boom, it's a perfect combination.
Another spicy take. Jamie, while you're up here, do you want to ask your next question for Benny? I don't know, Jamie, do you still have?
yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so Benny, one of the things regarding like Dapper is that I had a question regarding, because obviously Dapper's quite I wouldn't say like a closed ecosystem, but it's like a resistant ecosystem, as I call it. So it has like, it's quite highly resistant for users leaving the ecosystem. How does the story you tell, fit in with the wider sort of like ecosystem story, right, of transparency and open and all these open financial systems, whereas in Dapper's created this more resistant story?
Yeah, this is a really good point, and I feel like Jay had the feeling of an alley-oop, and I feel I kind of have the energy here with this question. So, well, I'm no longer at Dapper, so I think that the open approach, for me, I've always been an advocate of the open and transparent approach. And there were resistance to that. So, I think my kind of response to that was that I had to move on and build a more open company for sure. But more so, I think there is a mis kind of representation, and one thing that's super important, for example, Dapper did really well in creating distribution channels, right? Like every product that Dapper built, there was an email capture, right? And I'm using this very specific example, but At the end of the day, like Dapper has an email list of like millions of emails of the most engaged NFT owners in the ecosystem, right? From CryptoKitties all the way to Top Shot. And that's extremely vital, right? I think as we enter into Web3, there's often like a mindset of like, hey, we're open, like we'll rely on Discord, on Twitter to be our communication channels. We won't collect emails and all of that. And you're starting to see the problems arise, right? When people get Discord fatigue and they don't want to hang out in Discord anymore, I'm one of those, and they get fatigued out of Telegram or they get tired of Twitter, and now they kind of shut down their channels. And you, as a project creator, you were like kind of tooting the open, the open source transparency horn. Now you're kind of in trouble as a project, right? Because you don't have distribution channels to get the word out, to notify people of updates, to even pick up the phone per se, right? And be like, hey, let's talk, let's see how we can improve. You can't even conduct UX research when you don't even have all of that, right? So I think it's really important that there are basic things when constructing a startup, and formulating distribution channels and collecting information is good. Now, whether or not you use that information to lock them in and don't let them switch ecosystems and all that, that's a whole different matter that is, subjected to larger companies to make that decision. Obviously, my kind of forte on that is like, I do believe that like the only thing that is important is communication. Once you have that, then you should allow for everything to be open and transparent, and leave it up to the users to make that decision, right?
All right. Let's do one last question. Just want to be respectful of our uh, speakers' times. So, sorry, I'm trying to find it. So this question is from Anne about fundraising. So Anne, would you like to come up and ask your question?
I think she left.
Did she? Okay.
Yes.
Well,
You can
I'll
ask
ask
it
the
if you want.
question. Yeah. So, hi, I'm Ant. No, I'm just kidding. So the question is, how do you approach fundraising at the pre-seed stage? What's your strategy for connecting to the right funders?
Who wants to take it? Benny, you want to go first?
This is super broad. I mean, I think joining programs like this, like there's all sorts of ways you could apply to YC. You could come to this incubator. I was also part of the Variant Fellowship program. Like, so there's a lot of these kind of like easy intros into meeting investors, and then kind of like building your project. I think the main thing, to Jay's point, would be illustrating a narrative of growth, right? Like from the time I let's say I meet Steven today or Luke today, my first time, you make a good impression, and then every single week I would update Steven and Luke on like, hey, I shipped this. Oh, hey, I did this. And you start to slowly see, wow, okay, like this team is starting to grow and has an appetite, right? So that's kind of how I would do it if I was to raise a pre-seed again. I would just join all these programs, show growth, almost create a newsletter of all those VCs and just keep emailing them updates. And then I think you'll get to a certain point where they'll be like, hey, we should chat, and it'll lead to pre-seed.
For me, I'll give you another spicy clip. Uh, Look, the key for me to fundraise is that you have to build trust, and then you have to build belief. When I tell people I am doing this, I am only saying that if I am 100% sure that this is the hill that I die on. I will do it. Because I'm not telling people, hey, can you start my project by investing on it? I used to call the cavalry. Everybody always calls the cavalry for the cavalry to come. I always tell them, I'm the cavalry. The train is leaving. I'm doing this with or without you. I am just giving you a unique and timely opportunity to get on this with me. I'm leaving without you. But this is a very important part, because I have never, ever, ever trolled or fundraised for anything that I was not successfully fundraised or did it. And that built, like I said, the trust and the belief. If I call Steven and I say, Steven, I'm doing this, different levels of success we'll quantify later. How do we do market fit? We'll quantify later. How good is, but I'm doing this. So when you receive a phone call from Jay, this shit is happening. I started when everybody was doing short films in film school. I said, I'm going to make a feature film instead of a short film. My feature film sucked. It was awful, but I did it. And instead of making a 45 or 30-minute short film, I made an hour and a half movie that I sold and that I made money out of it, even though it was not very good. And then I said, I'm gonna make another one. And I made a second movie. It was slightly less bad than the one before, but I made it. I went from beginning to the end because at the beginning everything is fun, but I still had to finish the movie and I still have to deliver the movie and I have to do the promotion of the movie and I sold the movie. And 3 years later, I was not getting paid and I was still receiving emails from an obscure company in Italy saying, well, your movie has the wrong things. So I was always delivering everything that I ever said. By the time I did this 8, 9 times, people are like, okay, well, this guy is actually not going to stop, you know? So now those phone calls started coming, you know, Disney started coming, Netflix started coming. Many people are like, well, I have a great product, Netflix. Do you want to pay for it? I became inevitable. That's the word that I use. I became inevitable. This was happening with or without you. I didn't get Netflix until my ninth movie. Yes, I did 3 movies with Netflix then, but Netflix knew this thing was going to happen. So I became inevitable. And there's ways for you to become inevitable. And that's how you fundraise. That's how you get the community. They know that you're not going to abandon them. Because I will say that is probably my biggest thing for NFTs. A lot of people are, well, I was part of this, and now what? It feels like a short relationship, not a lengthy relationship. So I am financially invested on this and emotionally invested on this, and now that's it. It's a short-term relationship. I mean, put it back into your personal relationships. If you knew that you were going to break up with a girl 3 months later, would you really put that many emotions? Would you really put that much care? Would you really sacrifice going into other things? No. But the moment that you think this is forever, the moment that you think that this is something that you're going to take with you, then you feel completely different about it. It's the same thing with products, the same thing with this. Think about it from the iPhone and the iOS interface, or Google and their interface and the whole universe. Everything is tied to each other. Do you really will set up a phone to be pretty if you're going to use it for 3 days? It's the same thing.
I love that analogy and your quote, like become inevitable. That's such a quotable quote. Um cool. Well, we're a little bit over time, so let's wrap up. Any parting thoughts or plugs or ways to reach you guys? Benny, do you want to start?
Yeah, so we're working on linking every NFT with its own account, which really is going to give autonomy and ownership and all of that to these assets. And more so, I think it's just a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely check out tokenbound.org, or we launched this fun project this week, this Sunday, called RGB points.xyz. So yeah, a lot of fun experiments that are meant to encourage you to play with crypto. So yeah, thanks again, Luke and Steven, for having me on this call, and Jay, really good to meet you. I'm gonna have to
Very nice
watch.
to meet you, buddy. For
Keep it
me, I would
fun.
say I I I'm now looking try to figure out how to help founders in the Web3 space and in the crypto space is one of the reasons why we're putting these panels together and this conference together. And my idea or my hope was to bring as many smart and brilliant people as possible and try to help the community because I think that there is something really cool and really nice about what this whole crypto space is about. I really think it's a beautiful part of finance, technology, and art that all comes together in a brutal and raw way. But I'm really hopeful and very optimistic about if the right voices are heard, the right people are inspired, and the right projects are supported. I really like where this could go. I'm not as excited in other places right now because Hollywood, I'm not excited about it right now. So I will try to do whatever I can to find the next people that can become inevitable, the next people that can take all of us to fun rides, you know? And maybe there is cycles. I'm 38 right now. I still want to do some things, but I also want to inspire and help those bright and like and energetic people, you know? Dude, I remember this quote that we saw the Nvidia CEO saying, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do it because I know the price of what I did. It's so true. There is some things that I wouldn't do again because now I have so many scars, you know, of doing them. But the first times that you're doing them, dude, you're like this fire and you're unstoppable because you don't know where you're going. You're going through glass and you know, is that okay? It's just a little bit. But when you go through those glasses 100 times, you're like, okay, wait a second. Before you make me go through that door, I want to know how much I'm gonna get paid. I want to know all this. But I didn't care about anything. I just ran through the door. So I think that we have to help the next future of like the next younglings, you know, so they can run through those for us. It's their time to change the world. It's my time to execute. I was thinking at 38, we're more about executing. At 20s, it's more about changing the world. And at 40s or 50s, it's more about helping those guys that are now about to change the world. So maybe this is the second cycle for me.
Oh man, that's such a great way to wrap. So thank you guys. Again, thank you both of you for taking the time, some gems and some spicy takes in there. So again, thank you guys. And really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having us.